Grand slam for Masters!
It's time for Blessed to Play on EWTN Radio, uncovering the role that faith plays in the lives of sports professionals from around the country. And now, here's your host, Ron Meyer.
Fire, score! My guest today is Bob Katz. He entered the film industry in 2013 as executive producer of the film God's Not Dead. It went on to executive produce 2 more films in that series. For several years, he worked as the director of investor relations for PureFlix and helped to oversee the production of films such as Do You Believe?, Case for Christ, and God's Not Dead, A Light in the Darkness. Bob now independently produces faith-based films. In 2023, his team released a biopic of Phil and Kay Robertson of Duck Dynasty fame entitled The Blind, which became the all-time highest-grossing Fathom Events film. His most current film is Average Joe, which is scheduled to be released in October 2024. Here to talk about Average Joe is the producer himself, Bob Katz. Bob, so good to have you on Blessed to Play.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. I really appreciate it.
Well, let's get into the whole passion of yours to produce faith-based films. I rolled off a number of them there that you have done some great work on. So what motivated you or gave you the impetus to go in that direction?
Well, I really got into the business in a strange way. I was a partner in a CPA firm for 40 years. And one of my friends, who's now my partner, called me up one day and said, "Hey, I just caught my kid watching filthy stuff on Netflix, and God told me to make some really good faith-based films, good production values, good stories, so that they would have an alternative. And he told me to partner with you." And I said, "Troy, do you know anything about making films?" And he said, "No, I don't know anything." I said, "Well, neither do I." He said, "Don't worry about it. God told me to do it. It'll all work out." And so, okay. And our first film was, as you said, it was God's Not Dead, one of the highest grossing faith-based films of all time. And I just thought, wow, what better way to impact people? And one of the things that really motivated me to keep doing it was the emails and the text and the response we would get when our films came out. We got emails from around the world. We'd get people, I was about to commit suicide, and I saw God's Not Dead, and it gave me renewed hope for life. Or another one, my son was going to commit suicide. I didn't even know it, and we went to God's Not Dead. He said it changed his life. And we've been getting emails and texts like this now for years. And it just, faith-based films, media is how you get to the generations nowadays. And the power to touch people is what really made me say, okay, this is what I want to do full time.
What's interesting about that is that Hollywood obviously is based on revenue. They want to make money with their films, and there is an audience for faith-based films. Why don't you think Hollywood, if you will, as the institution itself, runs with this and produces more faith-based films?
Well, you got to have a heart for it. You can't say, "Oh, we need to produce faith-based films." Because they're going to be a good revenue generator. Because what happens is they produce a film that has nothing to do with faith. They start to take Bible stories or other faith-based stories, and then they say, "Oh, we can't say that. We can't do that. We'll alienate our other audience for the secular films if we do this." And by the time they've produced a faith-based film, it's so watered down or so incorrect that you can't fool the audience. They know this is not a faith-based film. This is Hollywood's attempt at a faith-based film.
Yeah, so the heart has to be there, obviously, in the passion to get the story out and the truth to be told. I think that's key in any component of producing these films. Well, let's talk. This is a sports show, as you know, Bob, and we're going to talk about your latest work. It's called Average Joe, and it's about Coach Joseph Kennedy, the Washington State high school football coach who won an 8-year court battle to be able to pray at midfield after games and then he resigned after his first game back. But I know this caught the nation's attention because this happens so frequently amongst coaches. Having played sports myself, so many coaches pray with their team, and he was really no different than any other coach, but he was scrutinized, he was ostracized, he was ultimately fired for doing this. What caught your attention about this story, and what gave you the motivation to put this in film?
Well, we started talking to Joe, I guess initially about 8 years ago. This case took 8 years to run through the court system. But Joe is a retired Marine. I'm a former Marine, and we just hit it off. And when he told me his story, it was amazing that this could happen in America. This was a guy, he really wasn't, he didn't go into this to be a football coach. He'd never played football. He'd never coached football before. He had a very difficult childhood, and he wanted to pour into kids who had similar hardships in their life. So he said, what better way than to become a coach? And he made a promise to God that because God was allowing him to do what he really wanted to do, after the game was over, when everybody's going home, he would go out on the field by himself and just take a knee rather, and for 30 seconds, thank God for allowing him to pour into young people to coach football, that everybody got off the field without being harmed. He was just minding his own business. And eventually the school board said, no, you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Just ridiculous stuff. They accused him of forcing the kids. There was nobody initially that went out there with him, just Joe. And then kids started asking, can I go out there with you? And then kids from the other team started asking, can I go out there with you? And Joe's response was always, yeah, it's a free country. You're more than welcome to join me. He never asked anybody to join him. He never implied that if you want to play, you need to join me. Mm-hmm. He was just thanking God. And the school board fired him. And Joe was enough of a Marine to say, I didn't serve my country for 20 years plus, fight in Iraq, to come back here and lose my First Amendment right to freedom of religion and freedom of speech. And he dug in for 8 years and fought all the way to the Supreme Court twice, and ultimately prevailed.
Yeah, and you say dug in. This wasn't an easy road for him. In fact, a lot of consternation within the family as well, hate mail, all sorts of stuff. So this wasn't an easy road for Joe by any means.
Overwhelming hate mail. Overwhelming. You cannot believe the volume and magnitude of the hate for a man who simply just wanted to go spend 15 seconds thanking God. And then, as you say, initially, his wife didn't understand how important this was to him and why he had made a promise to God. And it almost cost him his marriage. They got to the verge of divorce. And then there was a critical moment that we show in the film where she finally understands, this is why you're doing it, and she then joins with him, and they fight this thing through. As I said, it went up to the Supreme Court. It got remanded back to the appeals court for some technical issues, and then went back to the Supreme Court, where he prevailed. And all of us are now have stronger First Amendment rights than we had 10 years ago, for sure.
Blessed to Play Ron Meyer. We're talking today to Bob Katz. He's the producer of Average Joe, the story of Joe Kennedy, the football coach at Bremerton High School, who lost his job because he was praying at midfield, essentially. Yeah, that's what it came down to. Bob, I mean, this had to be a perfect situation for them even to fire him and to go this far. Do you think it was, no one wants to bring politics into it, but obviously there had to be politics with this. It was in a very liberal state, obviously, but how much was it the politics of a liberal board, the Bremerton School District, up against a conservative fellow that Joe Kennedy was?
I think that it was more wokeness. I don't know if you'd call it politics. Maybe it is. But it was more fear and wokeness. Everybody's walking around these days they want to take a stand, but they're afraid of what it might do to their career, to their job, to their reputation. And so they become the silent majority. We face this with our films. We go out and we'll cast actors, and then this happened with Joe, with Average Joe. They'll look at the film, read the script, and say, "Oh man, I'd love to play this role, but I'm afraid, what'll happen, and I'll never get to work in Hollywood again." So there's just, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think there's so many people now who are afraid to take a stand, but if they did, they would be amazed at the long line that would form behind them of people who would say, "Yep, that's what I believe too, and I'm going to take a stand, and I'm going to support you." We are trying with these movies to create momentum and create a voice for what I believe is the majority of Americans who strongly support the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion.
Yeah, and supporters of Kennedy said he had a right to pray in public, and then, he set a good example for his players, and the opponent said his actions violated the separation of church and state, which the Supreme Court ruled on. But I want to talk about his players. This had to be difficult for his players who really respected him as a coach. He was the leader of the team. How did the players respond to everything that was going on? I know this went over a period of years, but just the initial news that they were going to lose their coach for this reason, how did they take that?
They didn't take it well. They were upset. They were young kids. They didn't really understand the national implications of Joe's simply taking a knee in the middle of the field after a game was over. But at that age, you're sort of powerless to do anything about it. And so while Joe was there, they supported him. They loved him. They were over at his house in the evenings. Joe was there to pour into these kids. So they loved and supported him. And they took it hard when he left. But unfortunately, there was not much they could do about it.
Bless the Play, Ron Meyer. We're chatting once again with Bob Katz. He's the producer of Average Joe. It's coming out in theaters on October 11th. I guess you put it in the faith-based category. When you work on a film like this, Bob, and you see it from the beginning, obviously, and until its completion, how does this change you as a producer? What insight do you come across when you put this script together and then see the final product?
Well, I think what motivates me is, like we alluded to earlier, is we try and make films that are going to have an eternal impact. And I don't want to be too melodramatic, but, it's true. We're trying to put together true stories. Our films are all based on true stories of people who were willing to take a stand and put God first in their life. And when we do that, what we're finding, and we found this with all of our films, is that there's this vast majority of people who aren't necessarily far right or far left who say, "You know what? This film is my voice. I'm too busy. I have a wife, I have kids, I have a job. I have to get up early and go to work, and then I come home to family responsibilities. I can't be out there on the far right or the far left acting like an idiot. I have responsibilities, but this film echoes my voice. This is what I believe in." And that's why I think we get so much support, and we get such feedback on the lives we've touched. And that's why I do it. That's why I just, everybody gets information nowadays on some sort of screen, whether it's your computer screen, your phone, your iPad, or a movie screen. The best way to reach the most people with a good message is via a screen. And powerful films do that. And that's why we do it.
Yeah, they certainly move the heart. Would you say that truth is engraved on the heart of men, and when they see that and it's depicted, it hits them hard? Do you think that's a byproduct of what you're putting forth?
Yeah, I think you said it better than I did. That's what I was trying to say. This silent majority, yeah, people have truth. They know black and white. They know right from wrong. But they're so busy just getting through the day-to-day that when they see it up on a screen, it resonates, and they say, yes, this is what I believe in. This is what I stand for this. Go, guy. They make more films like this. Make more films like this. and we do. We try.
Fascinating discussion today with Bob Katz. He's the producer of Average Joe. We'll continue our talk about his producing faith-based films, and in particular, Average Joe, when Blessed to Play returns after this.
He was a mystic and reformer who died at the age of 33.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Catherine of Siena accomplished something no one thought possible. She convinced Pope Gregory XI to return to Rome after the popes had lived in France for almost the whole of the 14th century. They've been there ever since.
To find out more, visit EWTN.com and click on Catholicism.
EWTN Radio is all over social media. All your favorite programs are available right now, on demand for you to listen or download. Check us out on SoundCloud. Look for EWTN Radio. Remember, EWTN is everywhere.
Welcome back to Blessed to Play. Ron Meyer joined today by Bob Katz. He's the producer of Average Joe. It's coming to theaters on October 11th. Depicts the life of Joe Kennedy, a high school football coach in Bremerton, Washington, who basically was fired for praying at midfield. It went through the courts. The Supreme Court ruled with him. And, one thing that was really depicted in the film, and it's a very powerful moment. And Joe Kennedy resigned, but the game before he resigned, it was Bremerton's first game at home. It took place on September 1st. It was a 27-12 victory. And after the game, Kennedy went to midfield and dropped to one knee briefly to pray, and no one accompanied him, but his action drew scattered applause from the modest crowd in the stands. That was very powerful, wouldn't you say, Bob? And it kind of just encapsulated the journey of this man and that quiet moment that he took before he would resign between him and God.
Well, there's a story behind the story, too. That was highly orchestrated. Even though they lost the case, they were extremely difficult to deal with. They were extremely resentful. They isolated coach on the field during the game, wouldn't let him speak to the players or anybody for that matter, wouldn't let people go out on the field with him. And I know that they say he resigned, but there was never any chance of him actually being rehired, I don't think. So there's a story behind that story. It wasn't as it appeared.
Yeah, in fact, I think it even goes further than that. They wouldn't give him a coaching assignment for the game. They wouldn't give him a locker. I think he was banned from eating with the team, and he was banned from certain team meetings. But I think even though that all happened, that had to be a special moment just for Joe, because he was in with his own thoughts and he was there with God alone. Not that it was a fair moment by any stretch of the imagination, but it really just showed that God was on his side, and I'm with you, Joe.
Absolutely, and Joe knows that. I don't know if I don't know if you've interviewed Joe or not, but he is just a great guy. He didn't sue them. He did not receive a penny. He didn't sue them for back wages. He didn't sue them for any kind of monetary damages. He went through this 8-year horrific ordeal because he believed so much in freedom of religion and freedom of speech. So I think it was coming full circle for him, and he's continued to speak to groups and to young people all across the country to this very day. He's got a very active calendar between now and the time the movie comes out. So Joe did not do this for any reason other than the good and right reasons.
You mentioned you're a former Marine. Joe was a former Marine. How much did that play a part in his strong character, strong will to just persevere through this whole ordeal?
Oh, I think it played a tremendous part. That's what they teach you, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Uncommon valor was a common virtue. There's many, many things that they ingrain in us about doing the right thing and doing it to the very end. So I know that Coach dug in, knew he was right, and had the fortitude from being a Marine to carry it out for 8 years when I think very few people would have.
Kennedy was the winning plaintiff in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, a 6-3 U.S. Supreme Court decision that was in June of 2022. And essentially, the court said the Constitution neither mandates nor permits the government to suppress such religious expression. How is this going to impact coaches from now on? More freedom? They don't have to worry about being persecuted. What does Joe even hope for this decision?
I wish it was that simple. I really do. Let me say that case was a real precedent-setting case, Joe's case, because it overturned something called the Lemon Law. Mm-hmm. And the Lemon Law had, without most people realizing it, had taken away a lot of religious freedoms that the Constitution offered, that we have under the Constitution. And when it comes to any kind of public display, whether it's a menorah or a Christmas tree or an image of Christ, or it was the beginning of a 50-year reign of taking away religious freedom from people. And that case, Joe's case, overturned the Lemon Law. We talk a little bit about that in the film. So it was a major case. And yes, coaches, government officials, people have the ability now under this Supreme Court case to have public displays of religious beliefs. However, what the Supreme Court rules and the reality are two different things. And we are still hearing constantly about either people afraid to do it or pressured not to do it or threatened by their loss of their job. So this is still happening over and over again, and despite the Supreme Court ruling, because I think some of the attitude is, what are you going to do? Go to the Supreme Court again? You saw what this man went through. Are you willing to go through that? And so they back off and just walk away. But just because it's the law of the land, it's not the reality of the land yet.
And maybe you know this through your research. Is this just isolated through the Christian faith? Has there been other faiths that are non-Christian that have maybe had a coach that prayed in the middle of the field and they let it go? Is it only a Christian case that has gone through the court system?
I think yes, to answer your question is yes. It's only a Christian case that's gone through the court system. However, I think Christianity right now in this country, sadly, is probably the most persecuted religion. Mm-hmm. Nobody would dare do this with some of the other major religions in this country because it wouldn't be politically correct. But it's fair game to do this to Christians. And like I said, it's still happening. And that's why we have great organizations like First Liberty out there defending these cases over and over again and taking a stand and going to court and winning.
We're chatting today with Bob Katz. He's the producer of Average Joe. It'll be in theaters starting on Friday, October 11th. And it's exciting. October 11th is not too far away. And tell us what you're doing to promote the film and building up some excitement, if you will, before that October 11th debut.
Yeah, we just kicked off the campaign September 1st. You will see it everywhere. There'll be organic social media, our paid social media, our YouTube. It's all, thank the Lord, it's all starting to go viral. We're having tremendous, in just 4 or 5 days, tremendous reaction to the ads we're starting to run. In a couple of weeks, we'll start our radio and TV. We have a lot of affinity group outreaches. We've got Joe touring the country. We're going to continue to ramp it up for the next 5.5 weeks, and virtually, I think everyone in the country will hear about it in some way, shape, or form. But as I often tell people, because the feedback I get from our films, mm-hmm. First of all, thank God they love them, but they say, "Oh, we need more of this. We need more of this." And what I have to tell people is, then please go to the theater opening weekend. Mm-hmm. The film business is strange in that opening weekend drives everything for that film for the next 5 years. So if we pack out theaters on opening weekend, then good things will happen for the next 5 years for that film, and we will be able to do another film. So I would love for your listeners to go to averagejoemovie.com and buy tickets right now for opening weekend. Pre-sale tickets are also pre-theater release tickets are very important. So if we could start selling a lot of tickets now, if people show up for opening weekend, then not only will they see a great movie, I think this may be my favorite movie that we've done. Not only will I promise them they'll see a great movie, but we'll be able to make more movies and tell more stories like this and have an impact for eternity, hopefully, over and over again.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, go out in groups too. I know this is a faith-based film, so there's obviously youth groups, churches, a great way to take families.
If they go to the averagejoemovie.com's website, they can buy individual tickets, and there's also a button they can click on to buy group tickets as well.
Very good. Well, Bob Katz has been our guest. He is the producer of Average Joe. I encourage everybody to get out to the theaters, as Bob suggested, that first week, and then he could be making some more great films with a really message of redemption and value. Starting on Friday, October 11th, exclusively in theaters nationwide. Just go to averagejoemovie.com. Bob, thank you so much for talking about Average Joe. It sounds like a great movie and a great story indeed, and I appreciate you taking some time to join us right here on Blessed to Play.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ron. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to call me, and we'll try and answer them.
Very good. Hey, Blessed to Play fans, check us out on the web at blessedtoplay.com. That's blessed2play.com. You can like us on Facebook. Hit us up on the platform X at Blessed to Play. For Bob Katz, I'm Ron Meyer. Thanks so much for joining us right here on Blessed to Play.
You've been listening to Blessed to Play with host Ron Meyer on the EWTN Global Catholic Network. If you have a question or comment about today's show, feel free to email us at info@blessedtoplay.com. That's blessed, 2, play.com. You can also connect with the show on the web at www.blessedtoplay.com. Again, that's blessed, 2, play.com. Join us again next time for Blessed to Play on the EWTN Global Catholic Network.